This is a Testimonies with Terry follow-up.
All right, everyone. Well, I am here with season 3 guest, Matt Sassano. Matt, thanks so much for being willing to come back on and catch up with me.
Hey, man, it's awesome. I am so excited to be on the Testimonies with Terry podcast. I'm suited up for the occasion. I'm ready to do this thing. And so, man, it's great to be back with you.
Yeah, man, and shirt's looking great on you. If you guys are listening to this, you'll have to catch the YouTube video to see the merch shirt Matt is wearing. Yeah, man, this has been kind of a long time in the coming. You know, you reached out, man, months ago, just saying, hey, like I'm going to be having some stuff be coming out towards the fall. Would you be willing to have me back on? And I said, well, that's actually perfect because I'm taking a little detour from doing seasons of the podcast, and I'm going to do like a mini season of catch-ups with some of the past guests. And so it just worked out so good for you to come back on, and we'll chat about the music later on. But man, I think first things first, we should let the audience know that a couple weeks back, you and I actually got to meet in person for the first time.
Yeah, man, it was so cool. We were in Isle, Minnesota for this thing called Rural Fest. And it was kind of a different kind of event for me. I am typically into that rock and roll music and stuff. But I took the stage with a lot of just different CCM type artists, and it was a really unique kind of week just to kind of be out there among, so many different types of artists. And I saw you during my performance kind of stroll in, I think maybe halfway through the first song, and gave you the point. And I knew right then, man, I was like, I got to catch up with this guy, man. It's weird how you meet somebody from a podcast and you see them in person. It's kind of almost like you got that like, oh dude, they are real. So it was cool to catch up.
Right? I always tend to get when I meet people in person, they always think I'm shorter than what I'm actually am. And so I don't know if you had that impression of me, but I'm just like, no, I'm tallish. I'm 6 feet. So
Yeah, man, I had to like look up at you. Hey man, how are you? Was was there any different, was there any like differences in appearance and or just like, mannerisms as far as, what you perceived from our last interview, as opposed to the reality of it?
Yeah, so again, this was my first time not only meeting you, but like seeing you perform on stage. And in our interview from or from season 3, you talked about having cerebral palsy and
Yeah.
how you walk with a little bit of a limp. And so I knew that you walked with a limp, but then seeing it was just like, oh, that's right, you got cerebral palsy. Obviously, sitting here and you sitting where you're at, there's no signs of the cerebral palsy, right?
Yeah.
And so it was just like, oh yeah, I completely forgot that Matt had cerebral palsy. And man, you put on such a great show. I know it was a tough time slot, 11 a.m. in the morning, first artist of the lineup, but dude, you brought the energy. You rocked it. I could tell you were just being genuine and authentic to yourself.
Yeah.
And man, towards the end of the set, when you really kind of just share your testimony and share just some of the hardships that you went through with your dad and the abuse that you endured, you really had everyone, I think, in the palm of your hand there, just really wanting to hear more of you. And I think that was like towards your last song, and
Yeah.
then you went to your merch table, and I know there's a lot of people lined up at your merch table wanting to just talk to you and obviously meet you, get your merch, but then also talk about the impact that your story had on them. So thank you, man, for coming out. I mean, I'm in Minnesota, so that's my neck of the woods. Isle is super rural. And so thank you and Sensei Steve, your stepdad there, for making the drive from Tennessee all the way out to Minnesota.
Hey, man, it was awesome and totally worth kind of that 15-hour drive. Like I said before, I didn't even know until weeks, maybe 2 weeks prior, that I was even on the event flyer. Somehow, throughout this, season of heavy touring and stuff, I don't know how my name got on the list, but I was cruising Facebook, just kind of in one of those relaxed modes, and somebody had tagged me in a photo. I was like, okay, well, we'll see what this is. And all of a sudden, I see Danny Goki at the top. And then I see Matt Sassano in there in the flyer as well. And I'm like, okay, I had to Google my name to make sure that there's not another, Matt Sassano out there. And so it was really a crazy turn of events. Somehow the event organizer had heard of me. And so I just got thrown right into the action. And this was unlike any show that I've done. It was probably, and I don't say this lightly, it's like the highlight of my year, man, because there was so many different
Wow.
people there, so many different just stories that I heard from people, even out in the crowd of like what they've gone through, and just the crowd that was there was really really amazing. Like I've got to say there was multiple thousands there, and so just to have that whole weekend where we all just kind of came together and I kicked things off was just, I mean, it's totally amazing experience, man.
Yeah, man. It was my first time at the Rural Fest too, and I was blown away by not only the artists that they had, but like you said, just the number of people that came out. I mean, again, I don't know the population of Isle, Minnesota right off the top of my head, but it is not very big whatsoever. And for them to have the turnout that they did, man, I you could just tell the anointing of the Lord was on that place. And yeah, so you and I got to catch up afterwards. We were able to grab supper together and connect more. And man, it's cool because when we were talking, Sanctus Real, I believe, was playing the following night, and you were
Yeah.
really hoping to kind of connect with them. And I just saw you post on social media not too long ago that you just did an interview with one of the members from Sanctus Real. Is that correct?
Yeah, that was super cool. Like we met coming out of the cafeteria, and I'm just praying, I just enjoy networking with all sorts of different kinds of bands. And Sanctus Real was probably one of the bands that really was one of the most influential in my life. Out of that genre and style of music. When I was younger, as I said in previous interviews, I suffered very much so with anxiety and panic attacks. And for whatever reason, when I put their music on, it would just completely take my mind from my present panic attacks and my anxiety and like just transport me someplace else. I think mainly because they were a little calmer than a lot of the other music that I listen to. So oftentimes when you're having a panic attack, you need something a little more um, light but meaningful. As far as their music was always meaningful, and it just kind of was something that set the tone for me to kind of just relax and zone into the music and take myself away from that present uh, panic attack. So meeting them and getting to tell them that story, and then being on the phone with him, was amazing this past weekend. And aside from doing music, I also do a lot of work for Rock on Purpose, where I'm interviewing artists, and so it was cool, man. It was really an awesome experience.
Yeah, I just see like the goodness of God in that. He's such a good dad to us. I mean, here you are a couple weeks ago just saying, "Oh, I wish could connect with them and I wish I could, network with them." And then just a few weeks later, boom, you're doing an interview with them, man. I mean, God knew that was a desire of your heart, and just being the good dad that he is, he's just like, "Okay, here you go. You want to meet them, you want to network with them? There it is." So, very cool testimony in and of itself, man.
Yeah, like I said, this whole thing just came out of the blue. Like I didn't know until 2 weeks before, and then next thing I know, I'm like, I guess we're going to Minnesota, and next thing I know, like I said, somebody I listened to from a very young age is right in front of me, walking out of the cafeteria. You and I got to catch lunch with Rhett Walker sitting there exchanging funny tourist stories. So it was just like,
Right?
it's funny because I come at this as just as much a music fan as I am kind of a participant in this now. So it's a little weird seeing it from the inside and trying and being a part of something like that. And dude, I was so glad you were there.
Yeah, for sure, man. And yeah, next time you're in Minnesota, we'll have to do it again. But dude, it has been quite the year for you since you were on the show last October. October of 2022 is when you came on the show as part of season 3 of my podcast. And at that time, your In Defiance EP was just kind of rolling out.
Yeah.
And man, the single Dear God, dude, how many weeks did that spend at number one on the Christian charts? I was looking through your social media and I know
Yeah.
it was at least 8 weeks.
Yeah, it had to be a long, long time. Like it's funny for me to, I try to look back and track it too, but I can't necessarily find all the posts. I just know it spent a lot of time, and like I was just so happy that people were resonating with it. It's a song that really was close to my heart. There's actually, it's funny, in previous bands that I was in when I first started, there was actually, I've done 3 versions of that song over the course of 10
Oh
years. So that's
wow.
something that I've reworked 3 times. I don't know that maybe there's previous versions on the internet, but this is my third shot at that particular song, and I'm glad it finally kind of came to fruition. It's charting. It's something that I've held on to for the course of 10 years and kind of reworked and rewrote. And so to see people resonate with it to this degree was just an amazing thing, man.
Yeah, man. I mean, I don't know how anyone could listen to that song and not resonate with it, right? I mean, just the
Mhm.
message behind it of needing to just hang on to hope
Yeah.
because man, I'm kind of down to my last here and God, you're the only thing holding me up right now. And so a very uplifting song and man, when you and I were connecting in Isle, you were kind of telling me the story of getting signed to Rockfest Records and I think you shared that on our interview from season 3, but you were talking about how Joe Rojas from Seventh Day Slumber, he was kind of taking a risk on signing you and having you come out on
Yeah.
tour, right? Because you weren't coming in with like, a big name or following behind you. And so here we are, Rockfest Records' first release, boom, a number one single, like for at least 8 weeks. I mean, what's that like for you, man, to kind of see that progression of here we are kind of working our way into the fold at Rockfest.
Yeah.
We, put, your blood, sweat, and tears into this EP, and then God blesses it so that you have a multi-week number one hit. What's that like to kind of reflect on that?
Man, like I said in previous, in the previous conversation here, like I said, it's weird coming at this as a fan to a participant. Like when I was 17 years old, I'd be in my hometown and they had this thing called TVU back in the day, and I'd see stuff from amazing bands like Seventh Day Slumber and be listening to their music videos and everything like that. And so to be worked into this fold is just really an amazing experience. Like I said, it's just like a 360 experience for me. And I think like it just goes to show God will open doors for you, um, in the most unique of ways. Like the way that we actually started connecting with Joe is my stepdad Steve, who travels with me, aka Sensei Steve. Um, you know he just always believed in me, and he used to, whenever Joe would go live, there wasn't a time that my stepdad would be not on the internet with him and saying, when are you going to take Matt on tour? And I think over the course of you know, a whole year, every time Joe went live, there would be, when are you going to take Matt Sassano on tour kind of comment. And so finally it caught his attention, and we had made a call. And I think at first he was a tad skeptical because, like I said, he's had a 25-year, established career in the Christian music industry. And, so I think at first he was kind of skeptical, but we called him and we had a meeting with him. He really enjoyed my story. He liked what the music was about. And next thing I know, I'm on tour with them. And I think, he completely believed in what we were doing with Dear God and Not My Name, but I think he was just being careful. And at one point he said, hey man, I really love this song. I really think it's going to go far, but you may, just being careful, you may never see a number one. So just don't get disheartened. It's a long process, and it was weird to see that shoot up. Like he definitely had a huge belief in me, but it was funny that he just was kind of like trying to pad me from any potential letdowns. And he's like, well, it's a long process. You may never see it, but I'm believing in it. And it shot up to number one. Spent that many weeks, and each single that I've released so far has ironically gone number one, out of the 2 singles. So
Wow.
I mean, it's just crazy. And like I said, I think it's just God's doing, man.
Amen, man. Amen. It's I'm not an artist, right? Like so you're talking about how you're kind of on both sides. You're a fan and you're the artist. I'm just a fan, but trying to put myself in your shoes, for me, if I had a number one single, obviously I'd be super jazzed about that, right? Who
Yeah.
wouldn't? I knowing myself though, I think I would feel a little anxiety or a little pressure about, oh man, like, well, how do I top this next time, right?
Hmm.
And so for you as an artist, and I know you've been working on new music, and we'll talk about that at the end. But is that something that ever crosses your mind, like when you have success with Dear God and with Not My Name? Like, do you ever feel pressure to be like, okay, like how do I like outdo myself with this next song?
Dude, that is a repeated theme with me. Like, I'd love to say that it wasn't, and just be like, yeah, man, like but yeah, once you do that, it's kind of one of those things where it's this process. Even now, I've got some song ideas that I'm working on, and I just always like to stockpile. But there's this process you go through, and you know that you're going to be, for me at least, I'm not one of those guys that spits lyrics out. Like, I nitpick. And so I know what it takes to write what I write, at least for me, is to be disciplined, lock yourself in your room for hours on end, shut the phone off, shut the internet off, and, ask your family, could you please intercede? I think I've lost my talent. You get really nervous about, like,
Right.
just trying to put the best thing out there. And it's not really a matter of pride or like anything like that. It's just the fact that I am an artistic perfectionist, but at the same time, I want to be sure that the song I'm releasing is the thing that people need to hear as well. So there's also that spiritual component of like, okay, I want this to be number one, excellently written, but I also want to make sure that it's just not something that's going to be wasted.
For sure, man.
Yeah.
For sure. Thanks for speaking to that. I mean, that's something that I've always kind of wondered. And man, it gives me a newfound respect and appreciation for artists, and really a heart's desire to be praying for these artists because, yeah, I mean, there's anxiety, there's pressure, even in a Christian industry, right? Like, there's
Oh, yeah.
still kind of that pressure to always kind of outperform what you did previously. And so, yeah, man, I love how, you got your family, you got your support team that are interceding for you. And I think the important thing to remember, and you already said it, is at the end of the day, God will bless it, right?
Hmm.
Like this is up to God as far as how quote unquote successful it is on the charts.
Hmm.
That's all up to God. All you can do is be obedient to what it is He's putting in your heart, and then share that with the rest of the world.
Yeah, and I think there's something to just being genuine. Like, if you're really genuine, it goes a long way. Like, this speaks volumes to, like, I think I talked to you a little bit about this over lunch, but the fact that, an artist that's kind of new, like Oliver Anthony, for instance, is a very unpolished, very not what you would perceive as a top of the charts kind of guy. But he had that song that just came out, and now I think it's beating Taylor Swift, the big machine, Taylor Swift, in the charts. And I think there's just something to, genuineness and transparency. You may agree or disagree with the guy's message, but the idea is that, like, man, something that was filmed in this dude's backyard or wherever it was, just out there, not, I don't think professionally shot, just went somewhere because it resonated with people. So it goes to what you're saying about just like, you do what you do and God will do what he does, man. Nobody, uh, you know, maybe foresaw that guy, would shoot to the top of the music industry. But I mean, just things happen and things go where they may. And, when God's, in my case too, and all these Christian musicians, when God's in the driver's seat, you just got to let it happen.
Amen, man. Amen. The other question that I was wondering too, and you are the furthest thing from a prideful guy, as far as the man that I've been able to get to meet. But how do you remain humble? When you have a level of success like you've had, Matt, multiple number one singles, Dear God, 8 weeks at least at number one. How do you remain humble? Because I know, that could be a kind of a crease for the enemy to kind of sneak in and plant some seeds of, yeah, like pride and maybe like arrogance and stuff like that, and just kind of puff up your chest, just like,
Hmm.
all right, I'm doing this, and kind of losing sight of the fact that God's doing this. So how do you personally, Matt, just kind of take everything in stride and remain humble?
I'd love to say that like I've never been prideful in my entire life or anything like that, but that is like a battle that people, you have to go through and say, because I think it's because this industry, Christian or not, is very competitive industry, and just the fact that trying to put your music out there and trying to stay afloat is very competitive. And so you just have to keep yourself daily in check with prayer and, continue to, for me, I know that like whenever I write a song, I try to really make sure like that it's what I feel like God is leading me to say. And so you know, I'm trying, it's like one of those things where you have to just try to stay with that in mind. Like if God wasn't giving me these words and this burden, then I don't think this would go anywhere. Even if I had the best words and um was the most talented artist ever, just the fact, it doesn't necessarily mean an open door. So, um, I just have to kind of be mindful of it. Not that, I've never struggled with like that competitive nature of this and being like, ah, man, I need, but I think it's just a daily struggle for so many different musicians. And, um, you know it's something that just you just need to continue to focus where your mind needs to focus, which is like, hey man, if God's not writing through me, then it doesn't really even matter, and you just have to kind of keep that primary you know
For sure, man. Yeah, just keeping the main thing.
yeah, I hope that helped, that answer helped.
No, for sure, man. For sure. I appreciate you being open and honest about that.
Yeah, it's like you're still fighting those human tendencies, and it's not like, oh, I'm prideful. But I think, Christian or non-Christian, this industry is very like any creative field is going to be a competitive field. And so oftentimes just frustration with the industry can lead to, you know, like, oh dude, I'm writing this and this is, this isn't as good, or you kind of get that, and then you're like, okay, pull back, bro, like just chill out and just realize that God's the one blessing whoever he chooses to bless.
Exactly. Exactly. And man, continuing on the momentum that In Defiance EP brought you, the Grizzly Awards this
Yeah.
past year, you won, I believe, your first Grizzlies. So tell us about that. What award did you win, and what did that mean to you?
Oh man, well it was really awesome. I've watched the Grizzlies for I think the past 3 years, and I think this is, yeah, I think I've watched it pretty much every year as like a participant in watching it, and this is my first Grizzly Award. The Grizzly Awards is owned and kind of run by a team of music industry people that I'm pretty close to. Mary Nickel, shout out to her. She's one of those people that have really made that thing happen. But I was so glad to have won Fan Choice Award of the year. And I made a funny little video about my addiction to my Grizzly Award. You'll have to check out it on my Instagram if you haven't seen it. But I was really just honored and blessed to be a part of that. And like I said, like, being a part of something where, Disciple was a part of it, 7 Day Slumber is a part of it, so many great, amazing bands. And then just to be granted like Fan Choice was just like, this is surreal and awesome. So, yeah, I try not to carry it everywhere I go, but it is a really big honor to me, man. Yeah, that was so
Yeah,
cool.
man. I mean, fan choice. I mean, to me, that's just validation and affirmation that what you're doing is resonating with people, right? That, enough people voted you in that, hey, like, this is our guy. This is kind of like who we're rallying around behind. Um, to me, that's got to feel good just knowing that, okay, like that's further evidence that this is really resonating with people.
Yeah, man. And I think one of the things, the strengths that I have is that I've always been that kind of person that goes the extra mile for listeners and people that are into what I'm doing. Like, I'm always active on social media. I'm always trying to return messages. I'm always trying to, go that extra mile. And I think it just pays off because, um, a lot of artists aren't necessarily like that. And that's not like patting myself on the back, but I've just been in this industry long enough, even pre Rockfest Records, to know that there are a lot of people with, that rock star attitude. And I think it just shows that, like, if you're humble, if you're nice to people, if you just, invest in your listeners and stuff like that, that they'll, reciprocate the favor. And so I'm really grateful to everybody who voted for me. And again, just thank you so much, even this many months past the Grizzly Awards, for that opportunity.
For
Yeah.
sure, man. For sure. Yeah. I mean, talking about, investing into your audience, when I was at Rural Fest in Isle, I heard multiple people, just random people in the audience, talk about how the night before that you were just kind of walking around and you were chit chatting with people and just getting to know people. And so, I mean, I say that to the audience as just further evidence that no, like you truly are doing what you're saying. Like you're investing into people. A lot of, artists probably wouldn't do that. They, might sit back in their trailers, for the evening, or maybe stay off to the side of the stage and watch some of the artists. But you were out and about in with the people, in with the crowd. So I just thought that was really cool, man. I wanted to bring that up.
Yeah, man. I mean, like I said, traveled 15 hours, and I'm not so unself aware that I don't already know that nobody knew my name at that festival. So I was like, you know what? Like, we've got to make the most of it. And so yeah, like the night leading up to the festival, when I was gonna um perform, I just went out and, like, in between sets, would just like sneak up on people. Hey, what's up? My name's Matt Sassano. They'd be, hey, and just getting to know people, hearing their stories. And even after the, festival, I stayed, for a pretty good chunk of the day, after my performance night and everything, to just greet people and hang out. I don't even know what the inside of my trailer looked like, to be honest, because I never was in there. I was right next to Danny Goki's trailer, and I was kind of just like, this, it was just an undiscovered part of the weekend. I never did go in there. I was always out there with fans and gathering up a sunburn. So it was fun, man. I enjoyed it.
Very cool, man. Very cool. And then, yeah, I mean, the In Defiance EP was obviously successful for you. And then you were part of the Rockfest Records Christmas compilation album. You did your own version of Mr. Grinch, which was a really, really cool take on that song. I believe that reached, I think, number 4 on the Christmas charts, which again, God blessing more of your work there, which is super cool. I'm curious, what was it about the Grinch that you kind of resonated with that song, that it kind of pulled you to making your own version of that song?
Okay, man. So I just, from a very young age, I've also been a huge Christmas movie buff, and the Grinch was always that sinister character to me. But whenever I would hear, like, versions on the in the mall, or like on the radio, it was always that kind of playful Christmassy vibe type of Mr. Grinch. Not to throw any shade at the original, because that's the goat. But also, I just never realized why such a sinister character never had a rework of that song with kind of a Nightmare Before Christmas twist. And so that was kind of my endeavor, was to create a Nightmare Before Christmas kind of twist, with that. And one of the things about that particular song is, a fun little fact was, before I was signed to Rockfest Records, I actually just released that song online, and it didn't have the reach that Rockfest Records helped me get. So that was actually recorded and released online 2 years prior to its charting. And if you look back at its history, I did a little makeshift video with my mom on an iPad. Okay. And in the video, we're in our backyard, and basically the premise of the song, or the video, is that the Grinch had broken into my house and stole all my Christmas gifts, and I'm out in my backyard in war paint trying to hunt him down with a knife and some weaponry and all that stuff. It was a fun little video that I did on an iPad with my family out in my backyard, before that song had charted number 6 or number 4 or whatever it was. And so, yeah, that song had quite the history. and I was just glad to see it resurfaced and all that. So check out the video that we did like way before I got signed for that.
That's awesome, man. Yeah, I had no idea that you had done that song already 2 years in advance. So really cool. I mean, that's almost kind of a theme that I'm picking up here just in our time talking is that things that you were already kind of putting out years ago, you stayed obedient and you stayed faithful to what the Lord called you to do, and He brought that stuff around, into the present, and then just blasted it up into a different atmosphere. So super cool to hear about that, man. Um, and going back through some of your social media posts, it seemed like towards the end of last year, kind of going into this year, you were talking a lot about some of the health struggles you were having. You were having some high blood pressure,
Mm-hmm.
some struggles with anxiety. Can you tell us a little bit more about kind of what was going on there with you, Matt?
Yeah, I don't necessarily know where the high blood pressure stuff came from or anything like that. But as far as the anxiety stuff, it's just been something that I've always kind of struggled with. And it likes to peek its ugly head up every once in a while. What had happened was from the age of 16, when I used to be a really heavy smoker. And so I quit that in 2014 and moved to do the vaping and all that kind of stuff. And then after that, moved to the gum and spent about a year in 2021, nicotine free and all that kind of stuff. Struggled with it, went back to vaping in 2023. And for whatever reason, I'm not saying that this is for everybody. It just spiked my anxiety. It made me feel really junky. And so I just dropped it, man. I like smashed that thing in the parking lot and have tried to get away from the nicotine ever since. But I think it had something to do with that. And I'm just being candid and honest because most people wouldn't be like, talking about vaping and smoking. But that's just a struggle that I've had since, I was 16 before I got into music and all that stuff. And I think for whatever reason, for me personally, it just spiked my anxiety and I just didn't feel at my top of my game. So it's a consistent battle that I continue to try to, overcome and try to fight. So if there's, room on the prayer list, let everybody know they should be praying for that too. Cause yeah, I mean, sometimes things just don't agree with you anymore.
For sure, man. For sure. And again, thank you for being candid and talking about this because I think it just goes to show people that, yeah, just because we're believers, just because we're Christians, doesn't mean that we're perfect, obviously, doesn't mean that we have it all together. And we all, have some unhealthy habits, whether it's
Sure.
smoking, whether it's our diet, whether it's struggles with pornography, whatever it may be, right? Like we all have these vices that we turn to that aren't healthy. And so I'm wondering for you, Matt, what was it about, nicotine, I guess is what it is at the root of everything. What was it about nicotine that kind of led you to it in the first place? And I mean, obviously we know it's addictive, but what kind of kept you coming back to using it?
Man, I don't know. When I was younger, I guess I just lived, a lot of my history with some of the domestic issues and some of the stress that came with that. And so I think as just a young kid, I went through a lot with, trying to find my place. I felt misplaced within the church, I felt misplaced within circles of friends. And so about the age of 16 or 17, I just remember trying my first cigarette and, man, it was, I was hooked from there and it just was an ongoing battle. And so I had spent many, many years trying to quit and all that kind of stuff. And I was reluctant that the whole vaping thing took place. I think, we can look at that as like, oh, that was all bad. But really, that was the thing that kind of got me away from the traditional cigarettes. And with vapes, you can actually decrease your nicotine intake. And so you actually have, like with a cigarette, you're stuck. And if you want to quit cold turkey, it's a lot harder. So I think looking back, everybody likes to demonize like the vape thing, and I'm not one of those guys. It definitely helped me in that season to just kind of step down the nicotine. And then but I think at the same point when I stupidly went back to the vape when I was a year off of everything, that was a dumb decision I had made, where it was like, if I don't need it, then why am I doing it? And so there's that balance between, okay, like it's cool to help you quit, but at the same time, like, why did I go back to it and when I didn't need it? And so now that was kind of the thing. But yeah, I don't know. I think a lot of why I smoked in the first place was just a lot of different stresses and things like that in my childhood, and then you know a lot of people in my like my grandmother, she smoked like crazy, and so I think some of that was in the DNA too.
Yeah, no, for sure. Yeah, I mean, it sounds like you used it as a coping mechanism, right? For stress, for anxiety, this is something that I do to just try to relax myself.
Absolutely, man. And I'm one of those people that goes over the top. And so it's by the grace of God that I'm even still not on an, like, because I would smoke like 2 packs a day. It was like at my height, it was like 2 packs a day for very many years. And people would stop me on the street because they'd see me chain smoking when I was younger. I'd zone into my headphones and my music, and just there were two things that relieved stress. It was music and nicotine. And I would just end up smoking, and people would come up to me and be like, dude, you are a chimney, man, like you are smoking like crazy. So it's by the grace of God that I'm even able to achieve what I am on stage, knowing also that I was born prematurely and my lungs were an issue. And so, dude, I don't know, man. Like that's just, when I look back at that, it's like I'm glad that that's all over. I'm averaging right now about one half a slice of nicotine gum per day. And so that is something that I'm going to try to just, like I said, it's one of those things that just needs to be cut out completely. But I'm glad to be where I'm at. And, hopefully the rest of the way, just let it all go.
Hey man, all things are possible through Christ who gives you strength, right? So I have no doubt that, at some point and some point soon, I believe God will just take that craving away
Yeah.
from you, man. I mean, I think, that's the root of it right there. But then I think the other part of it for you too is just finding other avenues, other ways to deal with stress and to deal with
Yeah.
anxiety. And so as you've been on this journey, have you found anything? Have you found any other healthy kind of vices and coping mechanisms that you've been able to turn to when you start to feel that stress and that anxiety start to envelop within you?
Mm, man, well, I hit the gas station today and stocked up on so many different gums and gummy bears and sunflower seed. Like you name the quit smoking list, or, quit nicotine list. I definitely have a stockpile in my room, man. It looks like that scene in Heavyweights where the kids are stockpiling stuff in their cabin. I've got
Yep,
jelly
classic
beans. I've
movie.
Yeah, it looks like that scene in Heavyweights, man. I've got so much candies and stuff. So hopefully, that doesn't tend to go the other way, with me being a heavyweights person. But we'll see what
Right.
happens, man. And like I said, I'm like super almost there. And so like I'm just encouraging anybody with like any form of addiction, no matter how small it is, how big it is, it's never too late to kind of just cut it out.
Yeah. Yeah, no, and again, thank you so much for speaking to that and being so candid because again, I think, there's probably somebody listening to this who maybe it's vaping, maybe it's pornography, maybe they're a habitual liar, whatever it is, but they got this bad habit, this bad addiction,
Hmm.
and they feel so much shame over it because they're a believer and just like, oh, I'm supposed to have it all together. And so for you to be so candid and real with your struggle, but also sharing hope that hey, like God's been kind of reducing that craving and I'm almost there. I believe that's going to speak to someone right now as they're listening to it. So thank you so much for
Absolutely.
speaking to that,
Yeah,
man.
man. And I mean, even just like, so we can dive into this even further. You mentioned the struggle of pornography. Well, that was also something that I really dealt with, you know, throughout my life and everything. And actually, we're talking about like the In Defiance EP. The song Guilty Pleasure is one of the tracks on that. And that is exactly what that song is about pornography addiction. It sounds on the onset like it's about a relationship. But if you really listen to the lyrics, there's double entendres in it. So it's like you had me at the first sight,
Mm-hmm.
but not, and like all these different entendres in it that allude to the fact that it's talking about pornography addiction. And I think that the cool thing about being candid and being open with things is like the devil often likes to make people feel isolated in their addictions and in their problems. And if you notice in the Bible, when Satan was tempting Jesus, the first thing I notice about his situation is that he led him into isolation. He led him into the wilderness alone so he could tempt him. So when you feel alone, you feel isolated, and you feel like you can't talk about these things, it's often becomes kind of a playground for the devil to do his work. And so, like I said, whether it's nicotine addiction or pornography addiction or, even, heavy drug addiction, man, I just always try to encourage that, like, know that you need to get rid of it, but also transparency is key. You're going to have to be open at some point and just say, yeah, I've struggled with this, and God will honor your openness. Like, I think there's a lot of Christians out there who might fear the fallout from confessing things and trying to seek accountability, and there may be some of that. I'm not here to lie to you, but at the same time, would you rather please God or would you rather please man? And so it's like, that bravery to step forward and just say, I'm ready to receive whatever it is that it takes, and God will honor your openness and transparency in these situations.
I love that, man. I love that. You hit the nail right on the head. Isolation is a killer, in so many ways. And like you said, with hidden sin, I mean, even going to the pandemic and everyone being locked down in
Mhm.
isolation, that wasn't good for people. Like, isolation always makes things worse, it seems, right? And so yeah, when we bring what we're hiding into the light, out of the dark and into the light, it takes power away from the enemy. It takes power away from the
Mhm.
devil, because he now can't hold that over your head. He can't hold that over your head with guilt or with shame or with condemnation, because it's been brought out into the light. And I think so many times, at least in my case, and I don't know how it's been for you, Matt, but once you do that, it's like there's so much love and support around you,
Mhm.
where you even question, like, well, why did I even listen to the devil in the first place?
Yeah.
All these lies that people are going to judge you, they're going to condemn you, and it's just like, no, it's actually the opposite. People rally around me, people love on me, people pray for me. And have you noticed that too, Matt?
Yeah, it's just been a complete, like, cycle of my life. The things that I was most scared to talk about in my life were always the things that kind of open doors. Like, for instance, I mean, I don't know, my disabilities. This was something that like, a lot of people know that song, Not My Name, and how I kind of weave that into my testimony nowadays. But that was something that really took um, a lot of strength to come out with, because in the early days of my music stuff, I would just rather brush that stuff under the rug. And also with just anything that I've been transparent with, and anything that I've lacked transparency in has caused a problem. Even just like when I'm going back to like domestic abuse that I've faced, the main problem is the fact that we felt like we had no one to turn to. And so, again, just another place where the devil could have his way with what was going on because of the lack of transparency. And sometimes, people may think that they're doing good by hiding the truth, or trying to protect people from the truth. But ultimately, like I said, man, just transparency is one of those things that can really, set the trajectory in the right direction. And I know sometimes it takes strength, but you just got to bear down and just be honest, man.
Yeah, the truth will set you free. That's what
Exactly.
scripture says, and
Yes.
it's so true. It's so true. And so I just want to speak to anyone listening to this right now. Like Matt said, and like I've spoke to, if you're struggling with something right now, tell somebody. Get community around you. You will not be able to beat this on your own. You need community. More importantly, you need the the Father. You need God. You need the Holy Spirit working within you. But he often uses community. He often uses the people around you to help accomplish your goals of breaking off those addictions. So please don't suffer alone, get
Mm-hmm.
help. Matt, thanks again for speaking to that. And man, just kind of journeying on throughout, you know, the rest of our catch up time here. You were on tour earlier this year with Seventh Day Slumber, as you said earlier, and Magdalene Rose.
Mm-hmm.
I believe it was a West Coast tour. So tell us, how was that?
Man, it's always an awesome time to get out with those guys. And man, we just really tore it up. When you go with Seventh Day Slumber on a tour, you don't expect to stop. It's one of those things that definitely primes you up for whatever is to come next. Like uh, the quote that I got from Josiah from Disciple when I first went on my first Seventh Day Slumber tour was, man, if you can tour with those guys, you can tour with anybody. And that is absolutely proven true, because they are one of those bands that does not stop. And it really, if you're looking for putting your 1,000 hours in, you're definitely going to get it with a tour like that. But man, it was awesome. Just getting to be a part of that again and seeing so many different lives changed through that process. And you know, being first, getting to catch up with Maggie again too. I mean, honestly, one of the first tours that I was ever supposed to do with GFM was shut down during COVID. Uh, we did one show together in Fort Worth, Texas, in 2020, like the day before COVID broke out, and we were heading out for a month long tour, and everything just kind of shut right down. And so it was cool to also just catch up with Maggie again and get to like do a full tour with her and the rest of those guys. So it felt like very much a like picking up where you left off, and with because being friends with Seven Day Slumber, and then also not letting COVID be where I did be the last stand with somebody from the GFM set of people.
Right, right. I mean, yeah, you said it. Like, if you can tour with Seventh Day Slumber, you can tour with anyone. Because my goodness, they are just always on the road playing a show. I think they're gonna. I think as we're talking tonight, as we're recording this, they're playing their first show back on another loop. So, man, what an opportunity to play alongside them and Magdalene Rose. Now, were you part of any of the prison fellowship shows that they did? Did you get the honor of playing at any of those?
Oh, absolutely, man. Yeah, that was my first exposure to any of those prison shows, and those things are a complete like oftentimes sometimes you tour so much you tend to kind of go through the motions, but that actually being in those prisons definitely like outlines your usefulness, I guess you could say, because man, you hear some crazy stories from people. And I remember particularly on one night, like I heard a testimony from somebody who heard us perform and was really into witchcraft and gave his witchcraft up for a Bible book, or and everything like that. You hear stories of people who are unfortunately there for life, and but that what you said just really touched them and resonated and everything. And I think it goes to show that like if God is seeking you, it doesn't matter where you are, he's going to find a way to like reach you. And it goes back to that Psalms where it's like, if I make my bed in the depths of, that you'll find me. And so it's just crazy to be a part of that. And I've done numerous prison shows after as well. So that's something I love.
That's so cool, man. What a privilege, what an opportunity to be able to minister to those people. I mean, you talk about people who need hope, right? I mean, like you said, some people are in there for life. That's all they're
Mm-hmm.
going to know the rest of their life is those same four walls. And for you to come in and be able to just speak hope, speak life, speak truth into them. What a privilege. I mean, that's what God has ultimately called us to do, right? To share the gospel. And I love that testimony of that one inmate who was into witchcraft and sorcery and all that stuff, and now he's following Jesus. I mean, so what an impact.
Mm-hmm.
And man, again, as we've talked about, your music is so impactful, and you're about to come out with some new music, which I am super stoked to hear. So Matt, tell us, what do you got cooking?
Man, well, I am super excited. I ended up after my last tour with Seventh Day Slumber, ended up finding myself in the ranch again with Josiah Prince, working on at least two new singles. So The first single that we're going to be rolling with is due out in October, so we don't have too much longer. And I'm really excited about this particular one. It's called Fuel, and I'm sure we'll get into some of the meaning behind it. But it's really really good. Yeah.
Yeah, tell us about Fuel. What inspired that song?
So essentially, the song Fuel is, you know, kind of a thank you letter to all the people in my life that have set up obstacles or um, betrayed me or done things to me, you know what I mean, to kind of derail me, because oftentimes those things are the fuel to propel us in the right direction. It's based on the scripture that, no weapon formed against me shall prosper, but every tongue that rises up to judge you, will be silenced. And so, a lot of the song talks about thank you for this bad thing, thank you for this. The verses start out talking about thanks for all these, because indeed you are my fuel. And I've thought of numerous situations in my life where I thought I was at my darkest point. I thought that I was devastated, and um, God used the darkness of that situation to propel me right where He needed me to be. And that's really what the song is about.
That's so cool, man. That's so cool. When can we expect to be able to hear that?
So I think the official release date, I don't think Rockfest has released the date yet, but it is going to be, I'll just say it here, October 20th is when the song will drop and come out. And I've got that coming up, and just really excited about this. If you like the old In Defiant stuff, one of the goals was to give the people something a little familiar, but also kind of push the envelope and do things a little differently. And so I'm hoping that we achieved that balance of something fresh, but also something that people can sink their teeth into if they like the old In Defiant stuff, as well. So I'm super pumped, man.
Dude, me too. And you and Josiah, man, when you guys get together, you always come up with some really awesome stuff. And so I'm super looking forward to Fuel. Make sure you guys are paying attention to Apple Music, Spotify, anywhere you get or anywhere you get music. Pre-save the song when you're able to. Make sure you're following Matt on social media to know when that gets open for pre-save. Matt, where can they find you on social media?
So, hey, man, I have got Instagram, Facebook, all the traditional social medias. Right now, we're right in the middle of like redoing the official website, so it's a little troublesome. We're gonna have to get that up and rolling again. Um, and also, I just wanted to say this too as well. We've got another website for people who are looking for mental health help, or um, struggling or whatever. It's a little long, so bear with me. I had to reboot the site myself, but I wanted to take advantage of this opportunity. If you go to yourdeargodletter.squarespace.com, there's a place where you can kind of fill out a thing, and then on the second page there's a tab. On the second page there's a number to the Hope Line, which is a 24-hour Hope Line, where if you're going through something, you can call us, a professional, and they're eager to kind of just like help you through whatever you're going through. So find me on social media on all the traditional platforms, Matt Sassano Music. And then if you're going through something dark, man, yourdeargodletter.squarespace.com.
I love it, man. And I will post all of those links down in the show notes, so it's going to be easy for you guys to find.
Awesome.
Make sure to check those out. Follow Matt, and like you said, if you're struggling with something, go to that website. Go to mydeargodletter.squarespace.com and receive hope. Reach out to the Hope Line. All that will be in the show notes for you guys to find. Matt, this has been so cool and just so chill being able to just connect with you and chat with you for the last almost hour here. My last question for you, as you look back at almost a year now since you've been on the show, and you reflect on all that God has done during that time and just how good He's been, the goodness of God, what stands out to you?
Man, just all of it really, man. And just like, I guess, endurance, because like I said, um, as these opportunities unfold, I'm really happy to have them. But people don't see the grind and the inside work that goes into everything. And so I guess I'm saying all this to say to somebody, that if you're going through that grind, just continue to, man, and do whatever it is that God's called you to do, no matter what the obstacles are. Because, you know, there are, like, I love doing this music thing, and that is the huge payoff, seeing people resonate. And but it's not like I just you know ended up here by accident. And so what I'm trying to say is, man, if you feel like God's called you to something and you're going through that grind of like the daily hard work and maybe the self-doubt, just press into what God wants you to do, and never forget to put him first, man. That's really the message behind all this.
Amen, man. Amen. Well, dude, I love you, man. Thank you so much for coming on. This has been a real treat, and let's definitely stay in touch.
Hey, man, thank you so much, Terry. I really appreciate you.